Alright, so the time now comes where you ask the question, hey Avi, how do I add multiple graphs? So you taught me how to create one graph, that's fantastic. But what if I have, a completely different graph that I want to add to my figure? So I have one graph up top, maybe one graph to the right, one graph at the bottom, stuff like that. Where does the concept of multiple graphs come in? So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today, alright? What I want you to do is copy all the graph 1 lines that we have created. So Command C, give yourself some space, Command V. Alright, and now what I want you to do is change all the graph 1s to graph 2s, okay? So I'm not going to waste too much time doing that, whoops. But basically all of them should become 2s. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, 2. Okay, and one more, sorry about that, 2. So graph 2 is now our second graph on our figure, okay? We don't have to change anything. It would be nice to change up some of the data. So what I'm going to do is we're not going to be plotting these extra lines anymore since we don't need them. I should have actually removed them before copy pasting to save myself some time. And instead, I'm going to make the graph 2's plot as x2, y2, okay? And that's red, and this is red as well. So let's go ahead and change the color of this to yellow. Okay, and line width, let's make this to 2.0. Let's make that one a 2.0 as well. Cool. Whoops, 2.0. Cool. So we have graph 1. Graph 1 is fantastic. It's a subplot of 1, 1, 1. Everything was good in graph 1. What do we have to change in graph 2? Actually, nothing much, alright? So it's not too complicated. Basically, if you're creating a completely different graph, you'd maybe change the X, Y labels, the title, give it some different colors. However, since we're just showing how to create another graph on the same figure, we only have to change this first line. So graph 2 is equal to fig.add subplot 1, 1, 1. And if you remember in the previous lecture, or maybe 2 lectures ago, when I was talking about how to create this, I talked about these 3 parameters. So the first 2 indicate how big your figure is going to be, like what's going to happen. Is it going to be a 2 by 1, a 2 by 2? Is how many graphs are there going to be? So I remember how I said that you always have to specify that early on. Right now it's 1, 1, and that means that you're only going to be creating one graph. Right now, if you run this, whatever code you wrote up top is going to be overwritten by the graph 2. Watch. So my Python launcher is appeared. And take a look, we have this and we have this. Yeah, that's not great, we wanted 2 graphs. So how to add 2 graphs? The simplest way is basically change this to 2 by 1. And what 2 by 1 does is it creates 2 graphs, one above the other, or one underneath the other, okay? So it's gonna be one graph up top, one graph at the bottom, and then remember what the third parameter was. The third parameter says, which graph are we talking about? Is this the first graph, the second graph, the third graph? Since the top one is already our first graph, we need to change this parameter to be our second graph. So it's 2, 1, 2, whereas the top one is 2, 1, 1. Okay? So save this F5, and now if you take a look, let's see. Cool. So we now have 2 nice looking graphs. We have random graph over here, and we have random graph over here. And they both show different data. They're nicely arranged, stuff like that. So in this lecture, we basically learned how to add 2 graphs together in a figure. So I know what you're thinking. What happens if there are 3 graphs? Right now, with the dimensions we have, there's 2 by 1, that equals 2. 2 into 1 is 2. But the next one you can make is 2 into 2, which is 4. So what happens when you only need 3 graphs? Well, I'll talk about that issue in the next lecture. Right now, I just wanted to show you how to create multiple graphs in one figure. See you in the next lecture.